Welcome to B-Flow Sessions, the podcast where we help you find and stay in the flow on the water and in life. I'm your host, Brad Burton. Join me as I sit down with paddlers, athletes, and adventurers who are all seeking the flow. B-Flow Sessions is brought to you by our friends at Pecan Kayak Retreat. Are you dreaming of a Chilean whitewater escape this winter? Picture turquoise rapids, warm sunny days, and world-class rivers for every skill level, all based out of a riverside retreat built by paddlers for paddlers. If that sounds like your kind of winter, then Pecan Kayak Retreat is the place. To learn more or to book your dream kayak trip, reach out to me directly at bflowkayak@gmail.com and I'll help you get connected. Also, thanks to our partners who keep us in the flow: Dagger Kayaks, Stohlquist Waterwear, Sawyer Paddles, and Level 6 Gear. Welcome to the next episode of B-Flow Sessions. I'm your host, Brad Burton, and today I am joined by one of the legends of our sports, one of the best freestyle kayakers I've ever seen. This guy had just a style about him. He liked to see, I know he had a little bit of a background in skateboarding, and when you watched him on a kayak, it kind of looked like a skateboarder or a snowboarder tearing up a half pipe. This dude just had so much style. He, to me, embodied what freestyle kayaking means, is all about. And just so fortunate to have a good old friend of mine, Jimmy Blakeney, on B-Flow Sessions. Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brad. That was a very kind introduction. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I mean, I could sit here. It would take the whole episode to go through all your accolades and everything, and we'll get to some of those. But multiple time member of the U.S. Freestyle National Team, the 2003 national champion. A lot of first ascents and creaking and stuff. Sometimes freestyle paddlers get lumped, and think people don't want to get on the class 5, but Jimmy was just as comfortable and just as fluid and smooth out on those class 5 creeks as well, and was one of the just preeminent figures of the freestyle tour for about a 10-year period there. You couldn't go to any event and not see Jimmy there, and most of the time on the podium.
Always trying to get there, that's for sure. There's some great competition back then.
Yeah. It really was. Yeah, we'll get into that and kind of how that was the heyday and just the sweet spot for being a freestyle kayaker. But tell us about finding your flow and how you got your start kayaking.
Well, I started late in life. So I started paddling actually in graduate school. I was at Virginia Tech, and my background was in skateboarding and snowboarding from like a sports perspective. That's what I loved. My first love was skateboarding, still skateboard to this day, then fell in love with snowboarding. And then I was actually snowboarding in Vail, Colorado. I'd moved there just to snowboard. And I worked at a snowboard shop at the base of the gondola and in Lion's Head. And there was a roll class. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go. I've never seen this. And I'd always been around rivers as a kid because my dad took me fly fishing. His passion was fly fishing. So it's always around rivers. I loved rivers. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go check this out. And so I did a little roll class, and it kind of really just struck a nerve with me, and it stuck with me as far as like something that I was really interested in. So I did a couple of those there. I don't even remember who it was that ran those. And then when I left to go back home, I was going back home to Washington, D.C. area where I grew up, and I was still in school. So I was going back to finish school and in college. And I bought a boat at the Boulder Outdoor Center on the way home with the $1,000 that I had saved up working. So
What was it?
I bought a Dagger Transition, and that was my first boat. I bought a Dagger Transition, which was like the roundest displacement hole, like freestyle boat you've ever seen. And it's a funny story because I bought it because I came from the world of skateboarding, snowboarding. And so I always looked to like I knew I wanted to do like freestyle. I knew I wanted to do tricks. I was looking at the river like a skate park. And I saw the EJ, Eric Jackson, had won the world championships in this boat. I was like, well, if he won it in that boat, like, that's not going to hold me back from progressing. So, it was a classic marketing situation. But turns out the boat that he won in was nothing like the actual
Nothing.
production version. And so that boat was kind of a piece. Like it wasn't the
It
best
was a
boat,
terrible piece. Yeah.
but it was a good one to learn in. Yeah.
But man, that prototype that they had for the 93 Worlds was sweet.
Right, exactly. So that was my first boat. Went back home. My good friend Chris Emery, who's a great kayaker in his own right, and Eric
Hmm.
Brooks, they took me. They're both in the DC area. They kind of took me under their wing, and that was the first summer. So that first summer I was home. We went to the Lower Yaak. Obviously paddled the Potomac. Ended up at the end of the summer paddling the falls, which was great. So that was like my intro to the sport.
And what summer was that?
I think it was 95. I think
Okay.
I'd have to something like that. I think it was around then.
And so at that point you're hooked. And, so by like the summer of 97, you're sponsored, you're on the road, you're in a lot of the videos and things. And, I know that there was like a connection there with the founder of Wave Sport, and, him kind of getting you was sponsored with Wave Sport and on the tour. How did that all come about?
Yeah, Chan Zwanzig, rest in peace. Man, what a character. Yeah, he's an amazing person, totally eccentric. Um,
Yeah.
but I actually didn't get originally connected with Chan. I originally got my sponsorship essentially through EJ
Okay.
because I was at school at Virginia Tech. I was finishing up. So after that summer, I went back and was in school getting my graduate degree. And every day, it seems like I would go down to McCoy Rapid on the New River. And at the time, that was part of the tour, part of the freestyle
Yeah.
kayak tour. And so
Almost
that's
right in Blacksburg. I mean, right outside of
right in,
Blacksburg.
yeah, right in Blacksburg.
Yeah. Right.
And
Yeah.
so I would go down there like all the time, and I would essentially train. So one thing about the way when I get hooked on something, I go down the rabbit hole like completely. So I got hooked, and I was just completely OCD on figuring it out. I love figuring out a sport or an activity or whatever it is. Like once I get that bug, it's like I can't, escape it. And so I was just there trying to figure it out. And luckily I was at that spot where I knew that competition was going to be the next year.
Hmm.
And
The
so
New River Rodeo.
yeah, so I just trained that spot, this little tiny little hole, really tricky spot.
Yeah.
And yeah, then all the pros came into town, and I ended up getting second place in that competition. And it was like all the people that I was like in awe of, like Clay
Right.
Wright, BJ Johnson, EJ was there, Pablo was there
Mm.
with Dagger at the time, RIP.
Yep.
And, like it was just like such a cool moment for me because I could have never done that anywhere else. Like my skill set was
Yeah. Yeah.
my skill set was very specific to that spot.
Sure.
But because I put in all the time there, that gave me that opportunity, and that's where EJ, I believe EJ was like, "Hey, why don't we give you a boat?" And I had a Wave Sport Kinetic. That was my first sponsored boat that I received.
Nice.
That boat, yeah.
Yeah.
So
And EJ touched on this when I interviewed him is, when Wave Sport first started sponsoring people and you guys were in Kinetic, and Clay Wright talked about this as well. Like you guys were so focused and so dialed in on the competition side of things. Like it was your goal. The Wave Sport crew was gonna sweep try to sweep the podiums at every event. But for a little bit of time there, you guys had inferior equipment. And you were having to paddle harder, do more than the guys, and Dagger and Piranha at the time really had advanced designs for freestyle and perception as well. But then the boats started getting better, and there was a little period of time there from like the X to the Easy where you guys, it was almost a cheat code for you all.
it was. And by the way, you got a little crackle in your mic that I can hear,
Okay.
just so you know. I don't know if it's because you're close to it or not, but um, yeah, you're right. I mean, the Kinetic was not a fantastic freestyle boat. It worked, but really where it changed was the X. The X is where it changed.
Yeah.
The Stubby came after the Kinetic, and it was a really cool boat. That was Chan and I think Dan Brabeck. Great guy, great paddler, back in Steamboat still. and they worked on the stubby, and then they started working on the X, and that's when EJ and David Knight came into the picture. And I don't
Okay.
know the details of like who did what and how that design evolved, but what I do remember is getting that prototype. It was a glass X, and I took it to the Akoi, and I was there with David Grubbs, another incredible paddler. He was a Dagger paddler at the time.
Hmm.
And I was like amazed by that boat and put Javid in. I was like, Javid, you got to try this, and put him in it. And like, because that boat was so loose, like there was no boat like that. There was no boat at the
Right.
time that had that type of hull where it was like a drop chine and just incredibly loose. And so he got it. He put it on. He got on the front wave at Hell Hole, which at the time was a nice little wave. And he was just like spinning like crazy. And then he came off the wave, and of course he's a Dagger paddler. And he's like, I'm like, what do you think? And he's like,
It's okay.
it's too loose. I was like,
It's
what do
too
you mean
loose.
it's too loose? That was just hilarious, because we were all like, good friends and competitors. But he was like, yeah. And then actually, Richard Oldenquist, incredible paddler, like just a generation right before me. But I was
Yep.
on section 3 of the Chattooga with that prototype, and we were paddling that section and let him get in it at a hole, and he started cartwheeling it, and he was just like, choop, 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 choop. I was like, so that boat
Yeah.
was amazing. But yeah, we had a number of boats that weren't the most, and even the X, we had those of us that were smaller. Like I
Mm.
back then weighed 150 pounds. I still weigh 155 pounds, and we were running over the noses of our X's
I
to
remember that. Yeah.
try to compete with the guys that were bigger. And earlier on in freestyle, like Mark Lyle, some of the bigger guys,
Yes.
Ted Keys was really good, Dan Brayback, like they were actually the right size for some of those bigger boats. And those of
Thousand
us like
percent.
Billy Craig, myself, like a bunch of us, we were just too small to throw those boats around. So we were
Yeah.
squishing them, getting them really thin to be able to cartwheel them and keep up with the competition and keep up with the way the rules were changing, because it was just everything was just changing so fast. Every year it was just evolving. It was so fun to be a part of.
Yeah. And so tell folks about the freestyle tour to me really took off. 93 is a pivotal moment because of the world championships. But then I think 97 is kind of when you see the launch of like events all over the country. So many events that like the people on tour, you had to choose. Am I going to do the East Coast tour and then converge in Colorado in the summertime? And then they had a whole West Coast tour that also converged in Colorado. And that went through for like the next 8 to 10 years. And you were right there kind of on the precipice of that and when it first got big, but you were also not only a great competitor, but you were really involved in a lot of shaping the rules, formulating, standards for competitions. You were one of the main judges and scribes and kind of coming up with definitions for rules and or for definitions of moves and things and how they should be judged. I do have to tell a quick story. I try to tell a story on all of our guests that I know. The one thing about the paddle sport world, and I've never been a competitive athlete in other outdoor pursuits, regular sports I have, but they're so close knit. Even though we're competitors, we're trying to get on podiums and we're really representing our brands that are sponsoring us, right? Because if we do well, our brands do well, that means we get more sponsorship money.
Yeah.
So we're really competitive, but the close knitness of it and how well everybody, the camaraderie, and we'll be at a same feature the day before a competition, knowing we're going to compete against each other the next day, but helping each other out, trying to figure it out. And you were one of the first people, along with EJ and some of the other wave sport people, obviously the Dagger people, but that really took me under your wing and like showed me how to figure out a hole and things like that, and gave me a lot of advice. So I like super appreciate that. But that took a while. When I first met you, I didn't like you, and here's why. So I don't know if you remember this. So when I first decided to start competing, that's when you had to qualify for pro.
Okay. Yep.
And I want you to talk about this kind of and I remember like I'm starting to compete, I'm starting to get sponsored, and I'm like, I'm invited to the dinner, but I'm not at the cool kid table yet.
Mm.
And everybody at the cool kid table, they decided we're all pro all of you over there, you got to qualify. And I'm like, oh, I want a seat at the table. And it was like, well, go earn it. And I'm like, none of y'all had to finish it three times, three top fives in a year. That was just my feeling at the time. And I was like, man, like those guys. But then, like, as soon as I started, like, you were so cool and just, helped me along the way. It was so, you could see being happy for people as they move up the ranks and things. And then, you brought me in to help with a lot of the, you know, judging and things. And I remember we did an event at the Nantahala where we trained judges,
Yeah.
and you stayed at my house. So yeah, we ended up being really good friends. But when my first was like, man, screw that guy. So
That's
take
so
me through
funny.
all that.
Yeah. Well, I think it was such a interesting time because we were making it as we went, right? Like it
Right.
was a really unique thing. You're right, because it was small, but it was exploding in growth. There was no structure. It didn't have any structure. We didn't have enough people or enough resources to have like a whole slew of judges and like there was very little resources, like, a bunch of dirtbag kayakers trying to figure this out while we have this incredible growth going on at the
We had to
time.
judge for each other. Like we had to
Yeah,
judge the
and
women,
so
and the women had to judge
yeah, yeah,
us.
totally judging. Everybody's judging. They had to, because no one else knew how to judge.
Right.
It's not like we have
Exactly.
some independent judge panel. But
Right.
then we started training judges. I remember sitting with Chris Emmerich in Steamboat making the first American Whitewater NOWR, National Organization of Whitewater Rodeos, the first training video. So we sat there
Yeah.
and made the first training video on how to judge a competition because we recognized that we needed like professional judges that could judge this and be completely independent from the athletes.
Yeah, because if I could interject there, one of the problems, especially like as a Dagger guy, we would always perceive it's like the wave sport guys, they dominate this thing. And um, they're like, I'm competing against these wave sport guys, and all their wives and girlfriends also paddle for wave sport, and they're the judges. While I'm
Yeah.
competing against the Jimmy Blakeney, and his wife's up there judging. Who's she gonna give the blunt or the roundhouse to, me or Jimmy? Now that was my mind at the time, and in reality, Jimmy was just better than me.
Well, it's funny because I can remember, and that was Erica, and we're not together now, but she's incredible paddler, great person, and had great memories of that time. But I can remember like having really specific conversations about this point, about like
Mm,
the perception of it, like essentially being harder on each other if we're judging
yes,
than you would otherwise. Like, because you had to be like, you couldn't give the benefit of the doubt because the perception of that was that you were it was a favoritism. So yeah, that was a really crazy time. I mean, we just didn't have any judges to do it outside of the people that were there to do it. And we were running these events that were little, but then getting big. I can remember an event in Oregon. I can't remember where it was. 72 pros showed up for the event,
yeah,
and that was it was incredible. Like 72 in the men's pro division, on top of all the other classes at the time. And like think about today and like freestyle competitions. I mean, it's just it's evolved so
yeah.
much from those
There was
heydays.
a period of time when it was harder to make the U.S. team than it was to medal at Worlds.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no question. Like making the U.S. team was such a. I'm just so proud of that part of my career, being able to make the team, because the U.S. was pretty dominant. I mean, there's great athletes in the other countries as well, but the pool just wasn't as deep.
Right.
And so, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm sorry we kind of went off on a tangent there, but tell us more about the history of the tour and kind of formulating everything. And the reason why we had to make qualifications for pros is because, like you said, there was just so many people, and if you didn't, you would have 50 to 75 people, um,
Yeah.
trying to compete in the pro division.
Yeah, yeah. We essentially had a situation where it just wasn't tenable to run an event with that many people, and so we're trying to figure out the how you're going to create divisions and create a hierarchy. Which at the time, we're looking at this and we're looking at the future and being like, hey, this is the foundation for where it's going. Of course, we all know it's not as big as today as it was then, but yeah, that was the intent. So yeah,
Yeah, I remember, I started, like I said, I started competing that first year that rule went into place. And the New River Rodeo that you mentioned, it was always in April. And I medaled there. And then the next, like, couple weekends later was always the first weekend of May about was the Ocoee Rodeo. And I had medaled there. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to get this. And so the next weekend was the Coosa, and I did not medal there, and I was so mad. Again, kind of that perception of thinking like, oh, wasn't judged, properly or whatever. Now looking back on it, I'm sure I just wasn't as good that day as the other people. But then I didn't go out west that summer because I was like, I'm not a pro. I'm not going to go and spend all this money on my own. And then the next year, missed it again at the new, but then finally got it, at the Ocoee, and that was going to be my cutoff, my 1 year cutoff, and got it. And then the next weekend or like a couple weekends later was the Potomac, and that was my first pro event, and I was right behind EJ in the lineup.
Yep, it's pretty common to be right behind EJ. I was right
Yeah.
behind EJ at the 2000 pre-worlds. Got silver at the pre-worlds. EJ won that one. So yeah, I mean EJ he's remains the icon in the sport for
Yeah, no, I wasn't behind him in the results. I was behind him in the heat sheets. I
oh
was
in the
like,
yeah, yeah.
this is not fair that I've got to go my first ever pro competition and follow EJ.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's you're gonna see what you're up against right away.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's eddy out and take a quick break. Do you need a break from the cold of a North American winter? Then let's head south to the best whitewater on earth at Pecan Kayak Retreat. Email me at bflowkayak@gmail.com to learn more about how you can take the ultimate paddling adventure in the heart of Chile. Now let's peel out and head downstream.
Tell us some more about some of those first mentors and people that really helped guide you along the way. Maybe even once you started, getting really proficient and started touring, or the people who first helped you at the beginning.
And it's there's a lot of people. I'm sure I'm gonna not remember everyone, but like Chris Emery and Eric Brooks, they like are the ones like took me under the wing as a paddler, learning how to be a paddler and learning the skill set of like going and running a river, eddy hopping, like everything around just the foundational things that you need to be safe on a river and how to run a river. They taught me that, and then getting into freestyle, EJ was definitely a huge mentor in freestyle. He taught me a lot about his strokes and concepts, which was a foundational piece of my own paddling, but then also my own teaching because I ended up doing a ton of teaching. I have a master's degree in education, so like the teaching aspect became important for me. I love, like I said, figuring it out, and so then I like to share that with people. Um, from there, getting into freestyle, I mean, I was paddling with such an incredible group of paddlers at the
Hmm.
time, like on the tour, and Billy Craig was a huge influence on me just from a style perspective and the way he approached it. Loved watching him paddle, and the whole Waysport team really. I mean, and we just fed off each other,
Yeah.
and that was such a cool time. Beyond that, then for me, freestyle led into the way I saw it for the way I was paddling because I ended up moving to West Virginia, and that's where I bought a house in West Virginia and spent like basically a decade focused on whitewater kayaking as my passion in my career. But the freestyle part laid the foundation for my later river running and creeking. And
Hmm.
I just feel like for paddlers these days, that is such a great way to approach it. I mean, I was extremely cautious and I was very hesitant to jump into running hard rivers. And it wasn't because I didn't think I could get through it, maybe, but because I just wanted to hone my skills on, having really, really good technique. And I think that served me well later on when I started running really, really difficult whitewater, for sure. And Steve Fisher was a big influence on me then too. We paddled a lot of hard whitewater together, in addition to freestyle paddling together.
Right.
You know,
Perfect flow. A time that you can think about, or a couple times when everything was just so perfect on the water.
two of those. One was when I won the U.S. National Championship at Rock Island in 2003, and that story started. I had fairly recently taken over from EJ leaving to form Jackson Kayak, and so I had become
Mm.
brand manager for Wave Sport. And Robert Pearson, one of the greatest boat designers in whitewater history, who still designs for Piranha, he was just cutting his teeth at Wave Sport, Confluence Water Sports at the time. And we were in High Point, North Carolina at the factory, and we were working on the ZG. And we were like so immersed in it. And we were going from West Virginia at my house to High Point, where he's making the plugs, he's shaping everything. I'm giving feedback with the team, and we're designing this thing. And then we come out with a prototype. We pop out a plastic prototype with a glued on, welded on cockpit rim.
Yep.
Take that boat from there, and I hadn't been paddling every day because we've been so focused on getting this boat done. We head towards Rock Island, and I'm like, hey, let's stop at the green on the way. So we stop at the green, and I have such a clear memory of like running the green in that prototype and running Gorilla in that prototype, and it felt so good. The boat was so good, just as a river running all around boat. Then took that same boat to Rock Island, showed up, and I remember EJ saying to me, hey, Jimmy, where you been? And I'm like, oh, I've just been busy. And then getting in the water that day. And that day I was like just in the flow fully.
Dialed in.
It was just like everything felt right. Everything came together. Really memorable finals. I remember that, those are the things that are crystal in your mind. In the group of people, I remember Jake Kincaid, one of the greatest shit talkers in the Eddy. I think I won prelims, and then he was like, Jimmy, now it's time to paddle good. And I was like, Jay, it's always time to paddle good. So that was a huge one for me at Rock Island. The other one I would say was on Dinky Creek, from a creeking perspective. Went to Dinky Creek in California. Was there with Scott Langren, Willie Kern, Johnny Kern, bunch of other great paddlers. And that was such a great 2-day run, and I was fully in the flow. I was paddling a Wave Sport Mutant, which was a great boat for landing off a big waterfall because it was like a totally round hull, but it was a tricky boat to paddle. But I remember that creek, I ran a lot of rapids that were, some of the hardest stuff I've ever run.
Very cool. What about flood? Now, this is the time maybe in kayaking or in life when things just were not going well. And not only tell us about it, but how you handled that adversity.
Well, I mean, I can think of situations where I'm on the river and, getting pinned,
Right.
things like that, swimming. So those are like very specific situations. And I was pretty fortunate. I didn't have any horrific accidents or swims or pins. Like I was pinned underwater, had to bail out of my boat on Mans Creek, had Luke Hopkins boofed over my head, didn't know I was even there. And then I swam out of my boat, and then I swim down, and he's in the eddy down below, and he's like, I thought you were going to be in the eddy down here. Like he didn't know. So that was a situation that was definitely sketchy. But I think maybe a few times where it was something went wrong on the river. I can remember being on the Russell Fork, and there's a terrible undercut on that river. If anyone who knows that run, and I can remember, I think it was Bill Chappelle, I think, who went under that and drowned and came out the backside of the rock, and then can't remember who it was, resuscitated him, and he walked out. But that was a moment of just like, it makes you rethink your whole life and what you're doing, and those type of situations. So I don't know. That's something for me. I think, as far as life goes, I mean, I've been incredibly fortunate. I've had tricky times here and there, but I can't think of anything where it's just been like completely disastrous, But anytime things do go a direction that I'm not happy with, I think the key is just figuring out how to find the line through that, just like in a river, I mean, that's all you can do. It's like you're in the rapid, you're running it, and it's not going the way you thought it would, and you've got to still figure it out and find the line to the bottom. I mean, that's the best analogy I can give you about those situations and how I approach them anyway.
Do you find that kayaking, the river, paddling gives you training, experience, and metaphors for life that you use still to this day off the water?
Yeah, I mean that one right there is a great one.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean paddling is such an incredible, holistically everything around it, everything about it, from the skills that you develop, not only physically, like, but mentally, the
Hmm.
mental toughness that it takes, overcoming fear. I think for a lot of people that get into whitewater, there's a lot of fear, and
Hmm.
rightfully so. It's a really
Sure.
dangerous thing. I mean, water is incredibly unforgiving, and so yeah, I think it's a great general metaphor for life. I mean, everybody, whether you're a paddler or not, talks about the river as a metaphor for life, right? And so,
Hmm.
as whitewater paddlers, we all have a very intimate knowledge of the actual river environment, at a
Right.
level. You know what I can remember? I can remember being in the snowboard club meeting at Virginia Tech. Dan Gavir, great friend of mine, he was a huge influence on me. Took me under his wing, traveled with him in his RV. But we were in that whitewater. We were both snowboarders, so we were in. He came. He came. He was like a big kayaker already. He was like he was paddling. Gosh, who did he paddle for back then? Prion,
Like
maybe.
Prion,
It
and
was
then,
Prion.
yeah, Prion,
But
and then, yeah.
he came to that meeting, and I was like in awe of him. But like we became fast friends there. But I remember watching the video there. I remember watching whitewater videos there. I wasn't really I wasn't that accomplished in whitewater, and I was watching some of the whitewater, and I can remember just looking at some of it and being like, I don't even understand what the water's doing.
Right.
And I think a really cool thing about whitewater is it's a language, and
Hmm.
not whitewater, but water. And it's when you look at whitewater, moving water, and you don't understand it, that's like being a baby or being illiterate, right? And
Right.
you're looking at chaos. It's just a jumbled mess. And then as you progress in kayaking and progress in whitewater skills, your river reading becomes much better. And that's like becoming fluent in a language. And
Yeah.
as you become fluent, and for me, when I was in the flow, on the river, it was because I was seeing it exactly how it was. And I knew exactly what the angle of my boat and the way I was going to place my blade. And it was all just happening naturally. I wasn't even having to, it's that thing. You can be consciously competent where you're
Yeah.
having to think about it and you can do it. But when you're unconsciously competent, that's when
Yes.
you don't even have to think about it. And it's just happening naturally. And that's
And
to
not
me.
just in the moment, but also thinking, being able to visualize and see two, three, four, five moves down the river.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I play a lot of chess, and that's another. It's
Yeah,
it's similar to that. Yeah, for
for
sure. It's a,
sure.
it's a bit of a chess match for sure on the river.
And I found as somebody getting back into the sport, of course, like the freestyle moves. I mean, that's a lot of fast twitch, a lot of flexibility and things, and that definitely is a young man's game. But I found the river running and the reading the water that really stays with you. So much so, I'll be watching a YouTube video and the levels that extreme kayaking has gone in the past 10, 15 years. I feel like, you think about the Danes and the annuals, they're running water that I would have never even thought about doing, even in my prime. But I can watch it and I see them approaching a rapid. And again, a rapid I would have never thought about doing. But as they're watching, I'm watching their POV from their GoPro. I'm like, oh, they're going to boof there and then they're going to land here. And then he's going to take this stroke here and boof off that. And it's exactly what they do. Of course, then Dane probably throws a free will off of it or something. But to your point, like seeing exactly, I can watch any rapid, even if I want to. Yep, and you're going to go there and do that. I may choose not to do that, or now I don't have the skills to do that, but I know what the water's saying, right?
Yeah, I live vicariously through all the modern day incredible paddlers. I follow all of them. I watch all the POV. I love watching Noria.
Yeah.
She's incredible, and watching their lines from that POV perspective, it puts me right back there, and I can like feel it in my hips. I know exactly when
Yep.
that stroke is coming. Like it's amazing. It's such a cool thing to have. Because I still paddle, but not that often. I mean, I live in Rhode Island now, and I'm spending a lot of time surfing. But yeah, it's incredible what everybody's doing these days and how the boats have evolved. You know, all the rockered out boats these days. Man,
Oh,
everybody's
we
like,
talked about the X being a
it's
cheat
so much
code.
easier now. So much
Oh,
easier.
they're
Yeah,
so comfortable and they're so easy to paddle for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
This is like a total geek out nerd story. Have you ever been to Disney World to Epcot?
No, never been there.
Okay, so there's a ride called Soarin' Around the World, and you're supposed to be like in a hang glider, and you go over all these different like famous features of the world, like Great Wall of China and the African Serengeti, and you're up elevated, and you feel like you're soaring. Well, at one point, you're going along this rapid, and you go over Iguazul Falls, and it feels like you literally go over the drop. And every time at like I've ridden it dozens of times. Me and my family, we love to go to Disney World. And as we approach, and I'm sitting in this thing and I'm floating, I always go, I,
Yeah,
I boof it.
yeah.
So exactly.
Yeah, those things are ingrained. I mean, driving over a river, I cannot drive over a river without looking over the edge of the
Yep.
bridge. It's impossible for me to do that. And I also, same thing in skateboarding. Like I mind skate things all the time, you know? Yeah, yeah, it's pretty
We,
cool. Like that's one thing I really appreciate about the skill set I developed during the 10 years I was focused on whitewater paddling and being a kid focused on skateboarding and then snowboarding and now surfing and paddleboarding. It's like they all build up and then you have these skill sets that you can go back and revisit later on in life. And I think
yeah.
that's such a cool thing now that I'm older, is that I can go enjoy all these activities and just really enjoy them at a level that feels really fun and like I feel like there's a lot of understanding there. It's
Hmm.
like revisiting an old friend whenever I go paddle whitewater, which a lot of my whitewater these days is, and it's not a lot, but when I go to like Washington D.C. to visit my folks and I'll go connect with Brian Kirk, he'll basically I can show up, he'll have all my gear ready, go to the river, paddle, and I'm like, thanks, Brian, high five, and I'm out of there because it's usually short time. But being able to do that is such a cool thing.
Yes.
And that's something I really appreciate about anything that anyone does that they immerse themselves in and get really competent at,
Hmm.
because then you've got that for the rest of your life.
So you mentioned the surfing and the stand-up paddleboarding. This next segment gives us a good transition to that. The current. Tell us about what you do, currently to find flow in life and on the water.
Yeah, well, I'm currently, my work is, I love my work. I work with IL Oru Kayak, which is an origami kayak company.
Mm.
We have a new little brand and do some work with Tommy Bahama licensed water sports products. So I'm still fully involved in water sports
Okay.
and still designing, developing products, running the company at within Solo Brands. So I run the water sports division within Solo Brands,
Okay.
which is a publicly traded company that includes Solo Stove and Chubby's Apparel, and really cool to be a part of that. And that's
Yeah.
I'm in my fifth year now, and that's been a really fun journey to be on with them. Before that, I was with Big Sport for about 11 years, and that was super fun. So I kind of got into stand-up paddleboarding through being involved in paddling, whitewater paddling, plus loving board sports. And so
Hmm.
that combination was just a no-brainer for me. And so right as I was getting out of, full-time whitewater paddling, which was around 2007, I got into stand-up paddling, and that was really, really fun. And again, it's one of those things where it's like super fun for me trying to just figure it out. Like how does this work? How, all the little details. So I totally dove into that. But these days, I'm back to surfing, and I started surfing. I would say I started surfing in Australia at the 2005 World Championships in Penrith,
Hmm.
and Arndt Shaflin, uh, legendary paddler from Germany.
Oh, dude.
He took me surfing, basically. He took me, and taught me how to surf one of the first times. I'd been on a board before, but that was the first time I went and really was like, hey, I want to learn to surf. So we went on an off day during training for the Worlds. And from that moment forward, I was hooked on surfing. And that was actually right before I got into paddleboarding. So then the surfing and the paddling came together in paddleboarding. But today I'm in
Sure.
Rhode Island, and I am like a Grom. I'm a total kid when it comes to surfing. Like it is so fresh and new to me, even though I've been surfing now for like 20 years, but still feels so fresh and new to me. And so I just love it. That's what for me in life is, doing it from a sports perspective, like being active. I've got two teenagers that are incredible. My wife, my family, like we're all doing our thing. We're in the flow. I would say we're in the flow pretty well right now. It's pretty awesome with just work, life, kids, family, surfing. It all feels really good. Feel really
That's
fortunate.
awesome. I'm really just talk with some younger paddlers too, kind of like tell them like, and I felt weird by saying this, but like, hey, I'm proud of you as like an older paddler, but like that really makes me happy to hear you say like just how much in the flow you are with life and just kind of things in general right now. Like that, that's just, super awesome to hear. Um, what about flow advice? I want you to think about two different types of kayakers here. One would be somebody learning the sport for the first time, and another would be somebody coming back to the sport. It seems there's a lot of people our age who may have left who are getting back into the sport.
Okay. For somebody learning the sport, I think spending time in a pool before you even get in whitewater is really, really valuable.
Hmm.
One of the things, obviously, you want to get out on the river and just enjoy being on the river, right? That's fine. But when it comes to like actually getting ready to go run, whitewater at a level that you're ready for, I just think that time in the pool is so incredible because you're, just developing the foundational skill set you need, sets you up for success and sets you up for safety. So I just think that is a great way to start. Of course, it doesn't have to be a pool. It can be
Right.
the Ottawa River and all the pools in between the rapids. But something like flat water paddling for a whitewater paddler is incredibly important when you're starting. So
Yeah.
I would say don't. It's hard to focus on that sometimes. You just want to get out on the river, but the time you put in flat water pays off. For people getting back into it, um, gee, I don't know. It just depends on where your skill level was when you got out of it.
Right.
Um, for me, I definitely approach it cautiously these days. I don't
Hmm.
go off the couch and go try to run really hard whitewater. I love getting in a boat and just feeling the current and being able to have the edge control that I developed and just flow around the river and still do freestyle moves. And so I don't know, my advice is just enjoy it. Just enjoy it for what
Yeah.
it is, and wherever you are in your skill level, enjoy it within a whatever your comfort margin is.
Have you found now paddling in life, whenever you get to like class three, is fun again?
Yeah. I mean,
Isn't it awesome?
Mather Gorge on the Potomac is honestly where I get to paddle the most, and that section of river is so fun. There's so much happening there, different water flows. The one thing I miss the most though is river running, which I
Hmm.
haven't. I keep saying I'm going to get back with my friends and run the Golly. I've been saying that now for like a decade, and I've not run the Golly in so long. And I have it's and it's hard. It's like prioritizing things in life
Hmm.
becomes harder and harder. And it's a long ways for me. It's a big trip and traveling with work. It's just another trip to add. But yeah, river running is something I'd love to spend more time doing. I wish we had a whitewater river near me, but Rhode Island doesn't really have any whitewater.
Where is the closest whitewater? Like up in like northern Massachusetts?
Yeah, the Deerfield in
Yeah.
Massachusetts. That's a fun run that I'll go up and run sometimes. I've taken my wife down that, taken friends down that. That's really the closest thing to here. Not a lot, not a lot unless you drive a couple hours. Yeah, you definitely have to drive a few hours.
Yeah. All right. Are you ready to run some rapids with me?
Sure.
All right. So this is our rapid fire Mount Rushmore segment. I'm going to throw out a topic about kayaking, and you're going to give me what or who you consider to be your Mount Rushmore of these topics.
Okay.
All right. First topic, kayak designs of all time. You can be as biased as you want to be.
ZG Robert Pearson.
But no other on Mount Rushmore that's by itself.
The X with
Yeah.
EJ slash Dan Bradeblack slash Chan slash David Knight, depending on who you ask. I don't. That's a fun one. That's a fun controversial one. I think about historical development of the sport. But yeah, those two. I'll put those two.
Okay. Uh, rivers of all time.
Oh God, I mean, I have to go back to where I, spent most of my time in West Virginia. I mean, the Golly, Mans Creek, those were staples for me for years and years and years. I absolutely love those. I still can run them in my mind every single rapid, and I'll do it sometimes just laying in bed. So those were incredible runs. And then I would say the Sierras. I had some incredible time in the Sierras, just running some rivers that hadn't been run very often, and some rapids that hadn't been run that I was able to first ascent those, and those stick in my mind, of course, of course they do, those type of
Right.
situations. So like Dinky Creek, the upper South Stanislaus, did some paddling in those. Some of the best paddling I did in my career as far as like running really difficult whitewater. So yeah.
Um, Play spots.
New River Dries. New River Dries. That's where in 2003, when I won the World Championships, I also won the IR Big Gun Show, which at the
Mm.
time was called the World Championships of Aerial Freestyle Kayaking, because aerial
Yep.
freestyle kayaking was essentially being created during that
Right.
time. It didn't
Hmm.
exist before that. And so luckily for us in West Virginia, there was a huge flood. One of the best creeks in the whole state got destroyed. But when it got destroyed, it pushed all this sediment into the New River. When it did that, it created these new waves right at the put in, which are now called the put in waves of the dries. And those waves are some of the best anywhere. I think they probably are a notch lower these days compared to what everyone's finding, like with Stakeout and all the huge, insanely amazing waves. But
Right.
for me, those waves have a lot of history, and I love that place.
Awesome. Kayakers of all time.
Oh my gosh, that's so hard. That's really hard. So many. I gotta say, like, I gotta shout out to Wayne Gentry. Wayne
Mm.
Gentry. I watched his videos when I was coming up, like, with a cassette, like a tape. Like, I would watch his videos. Like, I think there's a bunch of CDs. But I loved watching those. Like, I was so enamored by the rivers they were running, you know, like seeing these adventures they were on, and the way he put those together was so entertaining. So I don't know, Wayne Gentry, I'm going to give props to. He's obviously a filmmaker, paddler, but
Yeah.
that's very early for me. But man, there's so many incredible paddlers that I admire. I don't even want to. I feel bad even listing them. I mean, like obviously EJ for freestyle, Steve Fisher and river running, Dan Gavir and river running. Um, like so many incredible paddlers. Yeah.
All right. This last one is called Final Flow. I usually, when I think about this, like I just think about being a father. You do things with your children, and a lot of times you don't know that it's the last time you did it, like changing a diaper, dropping them off at school, whatever. Like we don't know it's the last time when we do it for the last time. Picking up your kid, too sappy and sentimental, but there's the last time you picked up your son, right? And you didn't know it was the last time. if the river gods could tell you this is going to be your last time in a kayak, but you get to be any age you want to be, you get to be in any boat, you get to be on any river, and you get to pick your crew. Who you got? What do you got? Where you at?
I mean, for I think the dries. I think the New River
Okay.
dries because that epitomizes for me freestyle and river running.
Yeah.
New River dries, high water, the whole crew from West Virginia, and there's so many there, like so many people that I admire and respect that I got to paddle with there. But I lived with Brian Kirk, and would love to have Brian Jennings there, RIP. And I even think of folks like Shane Benedict who would come up to the dries, and we would hang out and paddle together there. And those were great moments. In fact, Shane is somebody that I really admire. Shane taught me to back surf, and it was out,
He's
we're
the
out
king
west.
of back surf.
What's that?
He's the king of back surf.
Dude, he taught me to back surf by telling me to put the paddle at my toes when I
Yeah.
back surfing, and that changed my back surfing. So props, Shane. But yeah, you know, the Johnsons, Katie and BJ, paddling with them was always amazing, and Clay, um, and Billy Craig. I mean, there's so many paddlers. I know I'm not hitting everyone, but everyone I paddled with in West Virginia on a regular basis, I would love to get that crew back together on the dries, paddle the put in waves, surf our brains out on those waves, and then run the river together and have a whole big water, a little bit scary, super fun, big water, run. So yeah.
That sounds amazing. Well, Jimmy, again, thanks for being a part of B-Flow Sessions, being with me today, and you know, getting to talk to you is, it's like documenting a little bit of whitewater and freestyle history. So, thanks again for coming on and sharing so much about that. And best of luck in all your endeavors, and continue finding the flow, whether it's on the ocean or on the rivers.
Yeah, Brad, it's great catching up with you, man. It's been a long time. I like what you're doing with this. Yeah, I think it's great that you know, for the younger paddlers to hopefully have a little bit of history. I mentioned Wayne Gentry, he was such a pioneer back in his day, and I think each of the subsequent generations in whitewater build upon themselves. And the more we
Yeah,
have, the more there's the documented, all this history of whitewater that exists that isn't that well documented. I think the more it is uh, documented and people can kind of understand where this whole sport came from. I think that's just such a powerful thing for the sport, which I love, dearly. Such an amazing sport.
yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thanks, Jimmy, for being on B-Flow Sessions.
Yeah, man, take it easy. See you on the river.
Thanks for listening to this episode of B-Flow Sessions. Please take a moment and rate the show, give it a follow, and leave a comment. Also, if you could share it with your fans, your friends, your family, and everybody else you know in the paddling world, that would help the show grow and help more paddlers find and be in the flow.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of B-Flow Sessions, where we explore how paddlers find their flow on the water and in life. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show, leave a rating, or share it with a friend. It truly helps us grow the community. And a huge thank you to Pucón Kayak Retreat for sponsoring today's episode. If you're ready for a world-class Chilean whitewater adventure, email me at bflowkayak@gmail.com and I'll help you get dialed in. Until next time, keep finding your flow.